Pirith's massive form drifted beside the wanderer like a moon beside a planet, his red scales catching the nebula's light in ways that made him seem carved from living fire. The dragon's consciousness touched the minds of everyone aboard the ship, not invading their thoughts, but announcing his presence with a weight that spoke of ages beyond human comprehension. Joey Martinez sat in the medical bay, wrapped in a thermal blanket while the ship's doctor checked him for injuries. His mother Maria held him so tightly he could barely breathe, tears streaming down her face as she whispered thanks to every deity she'd ever heard of. The boy was unharmed physically, but his eyes kept drifting to the view screen where the dragon waited. "He saved me," Joey whispered, his voice small and filled with wonder. "I was so scared. And then he came, and I wasn't scared anymore." Captain Daniel Hayes entered the medical bay, his expression mixing relief with the profound confusion that came from having every scientific certainty shattered in minutes. "How are you feeling?" "Joey? I'm okay," the boy said, then looked up at his mother. "Mom, can I talk to the dragon?" Everyone in the room froze. The idea seemed impossible, dangerous, utterly insane. Yet something in the child's innocent question made it feel right somehow. Lieutenant Karen Brooks stepped forward, her xenobiologist training warring with her disbelief. "Joey, we don't know if the dragon can communicate," she said gently, "or if it would even want to." A voice filled every mind on the ship then, ancient and deep like continents shifting. The language wasn't English or any human tongue, yet everyone understood perfectly because the meaning flowed beneath the words themselves. The small one called, and I answered. Pirith's consciousness announced, "This is the first true cry I have heard in 10,000 cycles of your star, Doctor." Peter Grant's hand shook as he activated every recording device in the medical bay. It's using some form of telepathic communication, but refined beyond anything we've encountered. The neural patterns suggest intelligence that predates recorded history. Daniel found his voice, though it took effort to speak while feeling the dragon's attention focused on them. "Great Pirith, we're honored by your presence, but we don't understand why did you save us?" The dragon's amusement rippled through their minds like warm water. "You ask why I protect the innocent? That is what I was made to do, what all my kind were born to accomplish. For millions of years, we answered cries like the young ones. We shielded those who could not shield themselves. We brought balance when chaos threatened to consume worlds. But you vanished," Karen said, her scientific mind grasping for understanding. 10,000 years ago, every dragon disappeared simultaneously. The legends say you abandoned the galaxy. Pirith's mental presence dimmed with something that felt like sorrow. "We did not abandon, we faded because there were no more cries to answer. The galaxy grew cold and calculating. Your predecessor species learned to suppress their emotions, to view genuine feeling as weakness. They stopped calling for help because asking for aid became shameful. And without true cries of need, without innocent voices reaching into the dark, hoping someone cared enough to answer, we had no purpose." Joey wriggled free from his mother's embrace and walked closer to the view screen, pressing his small hand against it. "You were lonely?" The dragon's vast eye moved to focus on the child, and something ancient and painful shifted in that gaze. "Yes, small one, we were lonely for those who needed us, and so we slept waiting. For a time when the galaxy might remember that needing help is not shameful, that crying out in fear or pain or hope is the most honest thing a being can do." Maria stepped forward, protective instinct overriding her fear. "My son woke you. What does that mean for him?" "It means humans are different," Pirith responded, and now his mental voice carried approval. "Your species feels deeply and expresses those feelings without shame. You cry when you hurt. You laugh when you're joyful. You rage when you encounter injustice. The older races lost this honesty millennia ago, but you small, quick-lived creatures still possess it. Daniel's mind reeled with implications. Are there more of you? Other dragons awakening? I feel them stirring, Pyrrhus said, and his consciousness reached outward in ways no human could. Follow. The child's cry echoed across dimensions we inhabited before your species learned to walk upright. It touched sanctuaries scattered throughout this galaxy and beyond. My siblings are waking, confused and seeking the source of the call. Captain, I'm detecting multiple energy signatures activating across the sector. Dr. Grant interrupted, his instruments showing cascading power spikes. Whatever mechanism kept the dragons in stasis is failing throughout the entire nebula. And the effect is spreading. Before anyone could respond, the communication system crackled to life. A priority transmission from Galactic Assembly headquarters demanded immediate connection, and Daniel knew there was no avoiding what came next. He moved to the bridge with Karen following. While Maria kept Joey close in the medical bay, the view screen filled with Ambassador Lisa Chun's worried face. Captain Hayes, we're receiving reports from across Assembly space massive energy anomalies, ancient structures activating, and multiple unconfirmed sightings of what can only be described as dragons. Please tell me you know what's happening. Daniel took a deep breath. Ambassador, I'm sending you our sensor logs and recordings. Everything we've witnessed is real. The dragons are awakening, and it started here in the Ashara Nebula. Lisa's expression shifted from worry to shock as she reviewed the data. This will cause panic across every member species. The dragons are legendary, feared by some civilizations and worshipped by others. We need to bring you and whoever or whatever woke them to Assembly Station Zenith immediately. The whatever is an 8-year-old boy, Daniel said quietly. A human child who cried out in fear when he thought he was going to die. And somehow that cry resonated with beings who've been dormant for 10,000 years. Silence filled the channel for long moments. Lisa finally spoke, her voice heavy with understanding of what this meant. You're telling me a human child has awakened the most powerful beings in galactic history? That's exactly what I'm telling you, Daniel confirmed. And according to Pyrrhus, that's the dragon's name more waking up because they heard Joey's cry across dimensions. Lisa closed her eyes, and Daniel could almost hear her calculating political implications. Captain, you need to reach Zenith as quickly as possible. Every faction in the Assembly will want to study this child, protect him, or eliminate him before more dragons awaken. I'll do everything I can to ensure his safety, but you need to move now. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge crew in stunned silence. Karen spoke first, her voice shaking. They'll turn him into a laboratory specimen or a political tool. Not while I'm in command, Daniel growled. That boy saved our lives by being exactly what? He is a frightened child who hoped someone would care enough to help. Pyrrhus' presence filled their minds again. You wish to protect the young one? This pleases me, but understand that others of my kind are converging on this location. They seek to understand why we wake now after such long silence. When they arrive, they will want to see the child who called us back from the edge of forever. Dr. Grant looked up from his console, face pale. Captain, I'm tracking 3 distinct dragon energy signatures approaching our position. They'll arrive within 6 hours. Then, we have 6 hours to reach Zenith and hope the Assembly chooses wisdom over fear, Daniel said grimly. Helm, set course for Assembly Station, maximum speed. As the Wanderer turned away from the nebula, Pyrrhus followed like a guardian shadow. Joey watched from the medical bay. One small hand still pressed against the view screen and wondered why the adults seemed so worried. The dragon had saved him. Surely that meant everything would be all right. But 8-year-old boys didn't understand galactic politics, didn't know how fear could make people do terrible things, didn't realize that being special could be more dangerous than being ordinary. The galaxy was about to learn what humanity had always known, that sometimes the smallest voice carried the most power, and that power terrified those who'd forgotten how to feel. The year 2847 brought humanity into a galaxy far stranger than anyone had imagined when Earth first reached for the stars centuries ago. The Galactic Assembly welcomed humans as their 48th member species. Though the welcome felt cold and formal rather than warm or friendly, this was a galaxy that had forgotten how to truly care about anything except power and territory. Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Wanderer, watching the Ashara Nebula fill the view screen with swirling purple and gold clouds that seemed to dance in the void of space. The nebula held secrets older than most civilizations, ruins that predated even the ancient Rex Empire, and his crew had been sent to study whatever remained of a time the galaxy barely remembered. "Captain, we're approaching the coordinates," Lieutenant Karen Brooks announced from her station, her eyes bright with excitement despite the long journey. She had spent years studying the legends, the old stories that most species dismissed as primitive mythology, tales of creatures called dragons who once kept peace across thousands of worlds. Daniel nodded, thinking about how different his crew was from the typical assembly vessel. Humans brought something unusual to space, something the older species seemed to have lost along the way, though he couldn't quite name what that quality was. "Take us in slowly, and keep all sensors active. We don't know what we'll find here." The Wanderer moved through the nebula like a fish through coral reefs, carefully navigating between massive crystal formations that jutted from asteroids like frozen lightning. The crystals glowed with faint internal light, pulsing in rhythms that seemed almost alive. And Karen's instruments went wild, trying to analyze energy signatures that made no sense according to modern physics. These structures are at least 50,000 years old. Dr. Peter Grant called from the science station, his voice filled with awe. "The material composition doesn't match anything in our databases, and the energy reading suggests some kind of stasis field. Though I've never seen anything that could maintain itself for this long without a power source." Daniel was about to respond when his 8-year-old passenger, Joey Martinez, ran onto the bridge, his mother Maria chasing after him with an apologetic expression. The boy's eyes went wide as he saw the crystal formations filling the view screen. "Wow, they look like giant diamonds," Joey exclaimed, pressing his face against the transparent aluminum viewport. His mother gently pulled him back, reminding him that the bridge was a work area, but Daniel smiled at the child's enthusiasm. Unlike the jaded older species, humans still felt wonder at the universe's mysteries. "They're beautiful, aren't they?" Karen said warmly, kneeling beside Joey. "We think they might be ruins from an ancient civilization, maybe even the dragons from the old stories." Joey's eyes grew even wider. "Dragons are real?" "They were real," Karen corrected gently, "but they vanished 10,000 years ago, and nobody knows why." The moment shattered as alarms screamed across the bridge. 3 Krenth Consortium ships dropped out of hyperspace directly ahead, their weapons already charging with malicious intent that needed no translation. The Krenth were pirates and scavengers who followed scientific expeditions, waiting to steal whatever discoveries others made through hard work and dedication. Battle stations. Daniel commanded, his training kicking in instantly. "Get Joey and Maria to the emergency shelter now." But the Krenth fired before anyone could move, their plasma cannons tearing into the Wanderer's shields with devastating force. The ship rocked violently, throwing people against consoles and walls, and sparks erupted from damaged systems as the lights flickered and died before emergency power kicked in. "Shields at 40%. Karen shouted over the chaos. "We can't take many more hits like that." Daniel gripped his command chair as another barrage slammed into the ship. Knowing the Wanderer was a research vessel not designed for combat against 3 warships. "Return fire and try to lead them away from the ruins. Maybe we can lose them in the nebula." The Wanderer's smaller weapons fired back, scoring hits but doing little damage to the Krynth ship's heavier armor. Daniel's mind raced through options, none of them good, when the worst possible news came through. "Captain, we have a hull breach in Section 7. The damage control officer reported. That's where the civilian quarters are located." Maria's face went white. Joey ran back to our cabin to get his toy. He wanted to show the science officer his model starship. Everything seemed to happen in slow motion then. Maria bolted toward the corridor leading to Section 7, while Daniel shouted orders to seal the breach. But the automated systems were already locking down to prevent the atmosphere from venting into space. Karen grabbed Maria, holding her back from running into a death trap, while the mother screamed her son's name with a desperation that echoed through every deck in Section 7. Joey found himself trapped in a nightmare he couldn't understand. The walls had crumpled like paper, exposing the room to vacuum that tried to pull everything into the void outside, and only the emergency force field kept him from being sucked into space. His toy starship floated away through the breach, disappearing into the nebula. And the 8-year-old boy realized he was going to die. The lights failed completely, plunging him into darkness broken only by the nebula's eerie glow. The force field was failing. He could hear it crackling and see it flickering, and when it gave out, there would be nothing between him and the cold, empty death of space. He thought of his mother, his father back on Earth, his friends at school, all the things he would never see again. Terror overwhelmed every other thought. Joey opened his mouth and screamed. Not words, but pure primal fear mixed with desperate hope that someone, anyone, would save him from this horrible end. The sound carried through the damaged ship, transmitted by still-functioning communication systems, and broadcast into space on emergency frequencies. But something else heard it too, something that had been sleeping for 10,000 years. The crystal formations throughout the Asara Nebula suddenly blazed with light brighter than any star, pulsing in response to frequencies no instrument could have detected, but every dragon across the galaxy felt in their ancient bones. Energy rippled outward in waves that transcended normal space, touching dormant sanctuaries scattered across 100,000 light years, awakening consciousness that had retreated from a galaxy grown cold and cruel. The largest crystal formation near the Wanderer cracked open like an egg, brilliant red light spilling from within. Something massive moved inside, unfurling after millennia of sleep, and then burst forth in an explosion of crystal shards that glittered like rubies in the nebula's strange illumination. Pirith the Red emerged from his stasis prison. The dragon was enormous, larger than the Wanderer itself, with scales that glowed like molten metal and eyes that burned with intelligence older than human civilization. Wings that seemed woven from flame spread wide. And the ancient guardian turned his gaze toward the ship, where a child's cries still echoed. The Krynth pirates stopped their attack, their weapons forgotten as primal terror seized every crew member. Their species remembered the dragons, even if they'd thought them mere legends, remembered what happened to those who harmed the innocent while guardians watched. Pirith roared, and the sound shook the nebula itself. The dragon dove toward the Wanderer, but not to attack. His massive form wrapped around the damaged section where Joey huddled in darkness. An ancient power flowed from the dragon's body to seal the breach and restore atmosphere. The force field stabilized, lights flickered back to life, and the child stopped screaming as oxygen returned. The Krynth ships fled, jumping to hyperspace without even bothering to retrieve their weapons platforms. And silence fell over the Ashar Nebula, except for the sound of a child sobbing in relief and a dragon's gentle rumbling that somehow conveyed comfort across species and millennia. Daniel Hayes stared at the impossible sight outside his ship. A dragon, a real dragon from ancient legend, was saving his vessel and protecting a human child? The galaxy had just changed forever. though nobody yet understood how much Karen's instruments showed energy spikes across the entire nebula, dozens of crystal formations beginning to glow and crack. More dragons were awakening, called by a human boy's desperate cry for help, and nothing would ever be the same again. Assembly Station Zenith hung in space like a massive wheel, its gleaming spokes connecting habitation rings that housed representatives from 48 species. The station represented the pinnacle of cooperative achievement in a galaxy more accustomed to conflict, though recent years had tested the cooperation severely. As the Wanderer approached with Pirith following close behind, every sensor and weapon on the station tracked their arrival with nervous precision. Captain Daniel Hayes watched the docking procedures with growing unease. 3 more dragons had joined Pirith during the journey. Skyra the Silver, whose scales reflected starlight like liquid mirrors. Emberclaw the Bronze, whose presence radiated warmth and ancient patience. And Frostmane the White, whose very existence seemed to lower the temperature around her. The 4 dragons maintained formation around the Wanderer, and their combined presence had caused panic throughout assembly space. "Captain, we're receiving priority docking clearance," Lieutenant Karen Brooks reported. "They want us in the diplomatic bay. Heavy security presence waiting." Joey Martinez sat in the captain's chair, his mother Maria standing protectively behind him while he watched the enormous station grow larger on the view screen. The boy had been quiet since learning he would have to speak to the Assembly Council, and Daniel's heart ached seeing such worry on a child's face. "It'll be okay, Joey," Daniel said, though he wasn't sure he believed it himself. "Ambassador Chun will be there, and should make sure nobody scares you." "I'm not scared of the Assembly," Joey said quietly. "I'm scared the dragons will leave if I mess this up, and then the galaxy won't have anyone to protect people anymore." Maria hugged her son. "Baby, you didn't do anything wrong. You were just being yourself. That's what worries the Assembly," Dr. Peter Grant muttered from his station. "They've spent 10,000 years building a civilization based on emotional control and calculated logic. Then humans show up expressing genuine feelings, and suddenly dragons are returning. They'll see us as chaos incarnate." The Wanderer docked smoothly, and within minutes armed guards surrounded the airlock. Ambassador Lisa Chun pushed through the security detail, her face showing relief when she saw Joey unharmed. She knelt before the boy, speaking gently. "Joey, I'm Lisa, and I'm here to help you and your mom through this. The council wants to meet you, but they're just curious, not dangerous. Are they afraid of me?" Joey asked with the directness only children possessed. Lisa hesitated, then decided honesty mattered more than comfort. "Some of them are afraid of what you represent change, the return of powers they don't understand. But others are hopeful, thinking maybe the dragons can help end the conflicts that have plagued us for centuries." Nathan Cross, the station's chief intelligence officer, joined them with a grim expression. "Ambassador, we need to move quickly. I've intercepted communications suggesting not everyone wants this boy reaching the council chamber alive." Daniel's hand moved to his sidearm. "Elaborate." Now, Nathan pulled up holographic displays showing encrypted messages between council members and known war profiteers. Several representatives have financial stakes in ongoing conflicts. The Vrex Empire's military contracts alone generate trillions annually. If dragons enforce peace, entire economic systems collapse, and some people would rather commit murder than lose that kind of profit. Maria pulled Joey closer, fear replacing her earlier relief. "You're saying someone wants to kill my son?" "I'm saying we need to get into the council chamber immediately, where attacks would be politically impossible," Nathan said. "The conspirators need to strike before he's under official protection." They moved quickly through the station's corridors, Daniel and Nathan forming a protective barrier around Joey and Maria, while Lisa led them toward the council chamber. Karen and Dr. Grant followed behind, their scientific training useless against political assassination, but their loyalty unshakable. The council chamber was a massive amphitheater designed to accommodate hundreds of representatives from species of wildly varying sizes and environmental needs. Translator devices filled the air with overlapping voices as delegates argued about the dragon situation, their fear and excitement creating an atmosphere thick with tension. Councillor Vex of the Vrex Empire stood at the central podium, his reptilian features twisted in anger. We cannot allow these creatures to dictate galactic policy. Our military sovereignty depends on our right to defend our territories. You mean your right to invade neighboring systems? Ambassador Chun countered as she entered with Joey. The dragons don't threaten sovereignty. They threaten conquest. Every delegate turned as Joey walked into the chamber, and silence fell like a curtain. The 8-year-old boy seemed impossibly small in that vast space, surrounded by beings who'd lived for centuries and commanded the fates of billions. He clutched his mother's hand, trying to be brave like his father had taught him. This is the child? Councillor Lumari of the peaceful Lumari species asked, her crystalline form chiming softly. He seems so young, so innocent. Innocence is precisely why the dragons responded, Lisa said firmly. Joey cried out in genuine fear without calculation or manipulation. That kind of pure emotional honesty hasn't existed in galactic politics for millennia. Vex slammed his clawed hand on his podium. You expect us to restructure our entire civilization because some human whelp is emotionally unstable? Daniel bristled at the insult, but Joey spoke before anyone could respond. I'm not unstable. I was scared. Is being scared when bad things happen wrong? The simplicity of the question stunned the chamber. Species that had spent thousands of years developing emotional suppression techniques suddenly confronted the radical idea that maybe fear served the purpose. Councillor Lumari moved closer, her voice gentle. No, small one. Being scared isn't wrong, but we've forgotten that truth. We've spent so long hiding our feelings that we've lost touch with their value. An explosion shattered the moment. Fire and debris erupted from the chamber's upper gallery, sending delegates scrambling for exits while security tried to identify the threat. Daniel threw himself over Joey, shielding the boy with his body while Maria screamed. Karen pulled both of them toward cover behind an overturned podium. Secondary charges detected. Nathan shouted into his communicator. This is a coordinated attack. Someone wants everyone in this chamber dead. More explosions rocked the station, each one calculated to cause maximum chaos. The carefully maintained atmospheric systems failed in sections and emergency force fields activated to prevent decompression. In the confusion, armored figures dropped from access shafts, their weapons targeting Joey's position with murderous precision. Daniel returned fire, his shots forcing the assassins to take cover. Nathan, get Joey out of here. No clear exits. Nathan responded, his own weapon blazing. They've sealed every corridor. This was planned perfectly. Joey huddled against his mother, terror overwhelming him again. He could hear people screaming, smell smoke and burning metal, see blood where shrapnel had caught slow delegates. The whole galaxy seemed to be trying to kill him just for being scared, just for crying out when he thought he would die, and he cried out again. This time, Joey's scream wasn't just fear, it was betrayal, hurt, desperate hope that someone somewhere still believed protecting children mattered more than profits. The sound tore from his throat with such pure anguish that every being in the chamber felt it like a physical blow. Outside the station, 4 dragons suddenly blazed with light. Pirith roared with fury that shook the station's structure. The child calls again, and this time, his cry speaks of betrayal by those who should protect. The dragons moved as one, their ancient power tearing through the station's hull like tissue paper. They didn't care about atmospheric breaches or structural integrity, only about reaching the innocent voice crying for help. Pirith's massive claw punched through the council chamber's ceiling, grabbing 2 assassins and crushing them like insects. Skyra's silver form flowed through the breach like liquid starlight, our presence freezing the attackers' weapons mid-fire. Emberclaw's heat flash-melted the conspirators' armor, while Frostmane's breath turned their ammunition to brittle ice that shattered harmlessly. The surviving assassins fled, teleporting away before the dragons could reach them, but the damage was done. Half the council lay injured or dead, and the station's emergency system struggled to contain catastrophic failures. Joey sobbed in his mother's arms, while Daniel checked them both for injuries. Pirith's massive eye appeared in the breach, focusing on Joey with ancient concern. "Small one, you are harmed?" "I'm okay," Joey whispered, though tears streamed down his face. "But other people got hurt because of me." "No," Skyra's mental voice corrected gently. "They were hurt because some chose profit over compassion, power over protection. You merely revealed what was already broken." Nathan was already analyzing the attack patterns, his mind working furiously. This was orchestrated by council members. The precision required insider access? Whoever planned this has been preparing for months, maybe years. "Then we find them," Lisa said grimly, helping injured Counselor Lumari to her feet. "And we make sure the galaxy knows that killing children for political convenience ends today." But even as she spoke, every screen in the chamber flickered to life. Across assembly space, emergency medical teams swarmed through assembly station zeniths damaged. Council chamber, while engineers struggled to repair the massive breaches the dragons had torn through the hull. Temporary force fields flickered under the strain of maintaining atmosphere, and the wounded filled every available medical bay. Joey Martinez sat in a corner observation room, watching through reinforced windows as ships evacuated non-essential personnel from the station. "It's my fault," the 8-year-old whispered, tears tracking down his cheeks. "All those people got hurt because I screamed." Maria held her son close, her own fear and anger warring with the need to comfort him. "Baby, those people got hurt because someone decided killing you was worth any price. That's not on you." Captain Daniel Hayes entered the room with Lieutenant Karen Brooks, both looking exhausted from helping with rescue operations. Daniel sat down beside Joey, his voice gentle but firm. "Listen to me. Some bad people made bad choices today. You didn't make them do anything except reveal who they really were. But the dragons came because of me," Joey insisted. "And now hundreds more are waking up and everyone's scared, and I don't know how to make it stop." Karen knelt before the boy. "Joey, do you want the dragons to go back to sleep?" The question caught him off guard. Joey thought about Pirith's kindness, about how safe he'd felt knowing someone powerful actually cared if he lived or died. "No, but maybe I should stop crying so loud. Maybe if I'm braver, if I don't let myself get scared." "Absolutely not," Dr. Peter Gran interrupted, entering with data tablets covered in analysis. "Joey, I've been studying the resonance patterns of your cries. What makes them special isn't volume or frequency, it's genuine emotion. The dragons respond to honest feeling, and if you start suppressing that, you'll be just like the species that drove them into stasis in the first place." Ambassador Lisa Chun rushed in, a normally composed expression showing cracks. "We have a situation developing. The Vrex Empire has mobilized its entire battle fleet, and they're demanding the dragons leave assembly space immediately. They can't order the dragons around," Daniel said. "Pirith and the others predate every current civilization. The Vrex don't care about precedent," Lisa replied grimly. "They see the dragons as threats to their military dominance, and they're not alone. 3 other major powers are positioning fleets in defensive formations. If shooting starts, we're looking at Galactic War." Nathan Cross appeared on a communication screen, his face showing the stress of tracking dozens of threats simultaneously. "Ambassador, I've identified the conspiracy's leaders, Counselor Vex, and 4 others. I've been funneling weapons to conflict zones for decades. They literally profit from every war in the sector. The dragons returning would destroy their entire economic model. Where are they now? Lisa demanded. Gone, Nathan said bitterly. They fled the station right after the attack. My guess is they're with the Vrex fleet, preparing for whatever comes next. Outside the station, the 4 dragons who'd rescued Joey now floated in formation, their presence both beautiful and terrifying. Dozens of ships kept cautious distance, weapons armed but not yet targeting. Pirith's mental voice reached everyone aboard Zenith. We sense others of our kind awakening, the ancient dragon announced. They come seeking understanding. They heard the small ones cry across the void and felt his pain, his fear, his desperate hope that someone still valued innocence enough to protect it. How many? Lisa asked quietly. Hundreds, Skyra responded, and more stirring with each passing moment. The young human's second cry carried such profound betrayal that it shook sanctuaries. Across multiple galaxies, Joey buried his face in his mother's shoulder. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause all this trouble. Emberclaw's warm presence filled his mind. Small one, you caused nothing. You revealed what already existed. This galaxy has been broken for millennia, held together by fear and force rather than compassion and cooperation. We retreated because there was nothing left worth protecting. But your cry reminded us that innocence still exists, that some beings still hope for help rather than simply taking what they can. The boy needs to understand what's at stake. Frostmane's cold mental voice interjected. If he continues to cry out, more of us will wake. If the galaxy responds with violence, we will respond in kind. But if he suppresses his nature to avoid conflict, we will fade back into sleep and leave this civilization to destroy itself. The weight of that choice crushed down on Joey's small shoulders. Either he stayed himself and potentially caused a war, or he became something else and doomed the galaxy to endless conflict without guardians. What kind of choice was that for an 8-year-old? Daniel saw the burden crushing the child and made a decision. No, you don't get to put this on him. Joey is a kid who got scared and called for help. The galaxy's response to that says everything about the galaxy, nothing about him. Maria stood, her own fear transforming into protective fury. My son is not responsible for fixing problems that existed for 10,000 years before he was born, but he's the catalyst, Lisa said quietly. Whether we like it or not, Joey's ability to call the dragons makes him the most important person in galactic politics. Right now, an alarm shrieked across the station. Karen's face went pale as she checked the sensors. The Vrex fleet is powering weapons. They're preparing to fire on the dragons. They wouldn't dare, Lisa breathed. Attacking beings that powerful. They're desperate, Nathan cut in. If the dragons enforce peace, the Vrex Empire collapses economically. They'll risk anything to prevent that. The first missile launched, followed by hundreds more. The Vrex fleet unleashed everything they had at the 4 dragons. Energy weapons and kinetic projectiles filling space with deadly light? Joey screamed, not from fear for himself, but terror that the beings who'd saved him would be hurt. But the dragons moved with grace. No ship could match. Pirith's wings deflected missiles harmlessly into empty space. Skyra's silver form absorbed energy blasts and reflected them into asteroids. Emberclaw's heat melted incoming projectiles before they reached him, and Frostmane created ice barriers that shattered weapons against them. They're not even trying to fight back, Karen whispered in awe. They're just defending themselves. Because killing isn't protection. Pirith's voice filled every mind. We do not answer violence with violence unless innocents are threatened. But a stray missile, deflected from its target, spiraled toward a refugee station housing families evacuated from war zones. The station's shields couldn't possibly stop a weapon designed to kill dragons. And 3,000 beings aboard had seconds to live. Joey saw the refugee station on the monitors. He saw children like himself pressing against viewports, parents trying to shield them, people who'd already lost so much about to lose everything. And something broke inside him, not his spirit, but his fear of using his voice. The 8-year-old boy screamed with every ounce of strength he possessed. But this time, his cry wasn't for himself, it was for them. For children he'd never met, for parents trying desperately to save their families, for refugees who'd already suffered too much. His voice carried no fear for his own safety, only desperate hope that someone would protect the innocent. The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. Across hundreds of star systems, thousands of dragon sanctuaries blazed to life simultaneously. From ancient crystal formations, from hidden dimensional pockets, from stasis chambers buried in dead worlds, dragons emerged. Red and gold, silver and bronze, white and black and every shade between. They came in answer to a child's selfless cry. Frostmane moved faster than thought, intercepting the missile and freezing it solid before crushing it to powder. The refugee station survived, its inhabitants unaware how close they'd come to death. And in orbit around Assembly Station Zenith, space began to fill with dragons. They came by the dozens, then hundreds, then thousands, ancient beings of such power that their mere presence registered on instruments across the sector. Ship crews abandoned their posts to stare at the impossible sight. Even the Vrex fleet ceased firing, overwhelmed by what they'd provoked. Pirith's voice resonated with pride. Now you see what was sleeping while your species squabbled over scraps. Now you understand what answers when someone calls. Not for themselves, but for others. Lisa's hand shook as she watched readings showing dragon energy signatures appearing across the entire galaxy. This is what the galaxy forgot. Daniel finished quietly. That the greatest power doesn't come from weapons or fear, but from caring enough about others to risk everything protecting them. Joey collapsed from exhaustion, his mother catching him. The boy's eyes fluttered closed, but a small smile touched his lips. He'd done it. He'd saved those people, and the dragons had come, and nothing would ever be the same. The galaxy transformed overnight in ways no politician or warrior could have predicted. Thousands of dragons now moved through assembly space, their presence fundamentally altering the balance of power that had governed civilized worlds for millennia. Ships that had been preparing for war found themselves shadowed by beings who could crush them like toys. Yet the dragons made no threatening moves. They simply watched, waited, and protected. Joey Martinez woke in the medical bay aboard Assembly Station Zenith 3 days after his selfless cry had awakened the dragon swarms. His mother sat beside his bed, dark circles under her eyes from sleepless nights watching over her son. When Joey's eyes opened, Maria burst into tears of relief. "Mom, don't cry," Joey whispered, his voice hoarse from screaming. "I'm okay, really. You've been unconscious for 3 days, Maria said, hugging him gently. "The doctor said your body just couldn't handle the strain. You burned through every bit of energy you had." Captain Daniel Hayes entered with Ambassador Lisa Chun, both smiling with genuine warmth. "Welcome back, Joey. You've missed quite a show." "The dragons?" Joey asked hopefully. "Did they leave? Are people still scared?" Lisa laughed, the sound carrying relief and wonder. "Oh, they're definitely still here, and people are adjusting. It's hard to maintain war footing when beings powerful enough to stop your weapons are floating beside every conflict zone in the galaxy." Lieutenant Karen Brooks arrived with Dr. Peter Grant, both carrying data tablets. "Joey, we've been analyzing what happened when you cried out for the refugees. The resonance pattern was completely different from your earlier cries." "Different how?" Joey asked, confused. Diogrand pulled up holographic displays. "Your first cry was fear for yourself, pure survival instinct. Your second cry included betrayal and hurt at being attacked. But the third cry, the one that awakened thousands of dragons, that carried no self-interest at all. You weren't scared for yourself. You were terrified for strangers. That's what made the difference. Pirith's mental voice announced as the dragon's consciousness joined the conversation. Millions of beings cry out in fear for themselves every day. Such cries are natural but not special. But to cry for others, to risk yourself calling for help when you're not the one in danger, that is the rarest thing in this galaxy. Joey flushed with embarrassment. I just didn't want those kids to die. Exactly. Skyra's silver presence chimed in. You saw innocents threatened and your first instinct was to call for someone to save them. That selflessness is why thousands of us answered instead of just 4. Nathan Cross appeared on a communication screen, his expression showing satisfaction. Ambassador, I thought you'd like to know we've arrested Counselor Vex and his co-conspirators. Turns out attacking Assembly Station was the excuse we needed to investigate their financial records. The evidence of war profiteering is overwhelming. What will happen to them? Maria asked. The dragons have suggested something creative, Lisa said carefully. Instead of imprisonment, Vex and the others will be sent to refugee camps and disaster zones, places their wars created, where they'll help rebuild without any authority or special treatment. They'll see firsthand the suffering they profited from. Poetic, Daniel murmured. And probably more effective than any prison? A commotion outside the medical bay drew everyone's attention. The door opened to reveal Counselor Lumari, her crystalline form chiming with excitement. Joey, there's someone, many someones, who want to meet you. Joey's eyes widened as species from across the assembly filed into the medical bay. Rex soldiers who'd abandoned their fleet. Krent merchants who'd given up piracy. Lumari scholars, and dozens of others. They came not as politicians, but as individuals, and many had children with them. A small Rex hatchling approached Joey's bed shyly. You saved my family. We were on the refugee station when the missile came. My mother says you cried for us even though you didn't know us. Joey didn't know what to say. He looked at his mother, at Daniel, at the assembled beings who'd come to thank a human child for caring about their lives. I just didn't want anyone to get hurt. That's why you're special, the Rex hatchling said simply. Most big people forget to care. They get all wrapped up in important things and forget that we're all just trying to be safe. More children came forward, each sharing their story. A Lumari youngling whose homeworld had been spared when dragons arrived to mediate a conflict. A Krength child whose pirate parents had been forced to abandon that life when dragons made preying on the weak impossible. Species after species, generation after generation, all touched by the return of beings who valued innocence. Dargrant wiped his eyes, not bothering to hide his tears. This is what the galaxy's been missing, not just the dragons, but the idea that protecting each other matters more than defeating each other. Ambassador Chun received an urgent message and pulled up. A galactic display. The assembly is ready to reconvene. They want to establish formal relations with the dragons, and they're asking for Joey's input. He's 8 years old. Maria protested. You can't expect him to shape galactic policy. We're not asking him to rule, Lisa assured her. But the dragons have made it clear they'll work with the assembly only if certain conditions are met, and Joey's voice carries weight with them. Pirith's rumbling consciousness filled the room. We do not seek to govern. We are guardians, not rulers. But we will protect the innocent. We will prevent conflicts that target the weak. And we will not tolerate civilizations built on the suffering of others. Those conditions eliminate half our economic systems. Someone protested from the crowd. Then your economic systems were broken, Emberclaw stated flatly. Any civilization that requires misery to function deserves to fall. Joey spoke up, his young voice cutting through the debate. Can't people just be nice to each other? Like, help instead of hurt? Build instead of break? That doesn't seem hard. The simplicity of his question silenced the room. Adults who'd spent decades navigating complex political systems suddenly confronted the radical notion that maybe kindness wasn't weakness. Maybe cooperation worked better than competition. Maybe an 8-year-old understood something they'd forgotten 1 year later. Joey stood at the observation window of the newly rebuilt assembly station Zenith, watching dragons and ships move together through space. The galaxy had changed in ways both subtle and profound. Wars hadn't ended completely, but they diminished dramatically when both sides knew dragons would intervene if civilians were threatened. Economic systems had restructured around cooperation rather than exploitation. And species that had been enemies for millennia were discovering they could be neighbors instead. Captain Daniel Hayes, now promoted to admiral, joined Joey at the window. "How are you feeling about the ceremony today?" "Nervous," Joey admitted. The assembly was establishing a new position, advocate for the innocent, and they wanted him to be the first to hold it. "What if I mess up?" "Then you'll fix it," Daniel said with confidence. "That's what humans do. We try, we fail, we learn, we try again. And now the whole galaxy is learning that from us." Lieutenant Karen Brooks had become the director of dragon species relations, and her work documenting dragon culture was revolutionizing xenobiology. Dr. Peter Grant's Research Institute attracted scholars from every member species, all studying how emotion and compassion could be integrated into previously cold civilizations. Nathan Cross's intelligence network had transformed into a protection service, tracking threats to vulnerable populations and ensuring dragons could respond before tragedies occurred. And Maria Martinez had become a voice for families across the galaxy, reminding politicians that every decision affected real people with real lives. Joey Martinez. Councilor Lumari called. "The ceremony is beginning." Joey took a deep breath and walked toward the council chamber, his mother beside him. The chamber had been rebuilt larger than before, with spaces designed to accommodate dragons who wished to observe proceedings. Pirith, Skyra, Emberclaw, and Frostmane waited there, along with dozens of other dragons who'd become regular participants in assembly discussions. The ceremony was simple but meaningful. Joey stood before representatives of 48 species and thousands of dragons, accepting the role of advocate with the understanding that he would speak for those who couldn't speak for themselves. He wouldn't rule or command. He would simply remind the galaxy that innocents deserve protection, that crying for help wasn't weakness, that caring about others was the greatest strength any being could possess. When the ceremony ended, Joey returned to the observation window where Pirith waited outside. The boy pressed his hand against the transparent aluminum, and the dragon's massive eye moved close on the other side. "Will you ever leave again?" Joey asked quietly. "Will the dragons go back to sleep?" Pirith's warm mental presence wrapped around him like a blanket. "We will remain as long as there are those who call for help, and those willing to answer." Your species taught the galaxy something it had forgotten. Small one, that every voice matters, that every cry deserves response, that protecting each other is not a duty, but a privilege. "I'm glad you came back," Joey whispered. "We're glad you called us," Pirith responded. "Now go play with your friends. The galaxy can wait. Children should not have to carry its weight alone."